Have you ever wondered? This universe we're in is vast. There are almost an unlimited number of other planets out there. So why have we never seen other intelligent life forms? Well, one theory is that many have existed throughout time, but each past civilization has become so technologically advanced, they've ended up causing their own destruction. And since reading about this idea, I've spent pretty much the last year reflecting on it, reading about it, thinking about it, talking to other people about it, and the conclusion I've come to is that humans should be worried. We talk a lot about the environmental crisis and other threats to humankind, but we might well be walking into something even more precarious. A technological crisis. I've split this video into 5 brief sections, and stick with me here, I don't think you'll regret it. So, it starts with this. You don't need telling that technology is evolving fast. In the last 50 years alone, computers have become 1 trillion times more powerful, and humans aren't particularly good at visualizing numbers of that scale. So, just to give you an idea of how much of a jump 1 trillion times is, imagine a $1 note. It's about 1 millimeter thick, absolutely tiny, but if we had 1 trillion of those notes and stacked them, it would be enough to go from Earth all the way to the International Space Station orbiting the planet and back again 125 times. And this leads me on to the second part, because whilst technology is skyrocketing, humans are relatively fixed. In the whole of the last 50,000 years, our intelligence, speed, and strength have barely budged. Don't get me wrong, humanity has built some incredible things collectively as a race. We've learnt to generate electricity, build space rockets, and so on. But if we took a single human baby from 50,000 years ago and raised it today, the difference would be pretty unremarkable. You might not even notice. If anything, I would actually predict that as technology improves, humans will start to become less intelligent. I think we're already starting to see this happen. Our reliance on Google Maps, online translation, calculators in our pockets have already led us to actually possessing worse raw skills if you took those things away. How many times have you left home without your smartphone and literally did not know what to do with yourself? Because we're increasingly outsourcing our thinking to technology, over time I reckon we're going to start using less of our brains. And this is a problem. See, the way genetics works is whenever a trait or a characteristic becomes less important to a species, it generally gets evolved out of the system. For example, as early humans were progressing and started eating cooked food, our jaws became smaller and weaker. We no longer needed massive jaw muscles to crunch through bones or shells because the food we're eating is softer, and the weaker jaw allowed more room for our brains to expand. So in a similar way, if we start to use our brains less, then our brains aren't going to go stronger, and if anything, might become weaker. So, technology is soaring, humans are fixed. Where does that lead us? Well, I would argue to a future where humans become less interesting and less useful compared to technology. And again, we've already started seeing this happen. A modern smartphone, with its ability to fly between powerful applications, can keep a user entertained far more consistently than even most people can. You might remember a man called Usain Bolt. He ran the fastest 100-meter sprint the world has ever seen at 9.58 seconds. But that was in 2009. Humans have come so far since then, so why has nobody beaten it? Well, the answer to that is that humans, unassisted by technology, have limits, and I would say we're moving towards them. The very physics of being human mean that it's basically impossible to run 100 meters any faster than 9 seconds. I could see a situation where in the future it's actually robots that take our place in extreme sports because they aren't constrained by these same limitations. We'll see machines dueling to the death instead of modern-day boxing, and Formula 1 racing cars being replaced by AI-powered vehicles. It just makes sense. No person's going to get hurt, and what these machines could achieve would be limitless. Plus, as a viewer, your experience would be far more immersive. Humans will be sitting somewhere completely different, seeing the whole thing through virtual reality. You could feel these extreme sports from a first-person perspective. You could feel like you're in the driver's seat of the car that's about to achieve the world speed record. And technology won't just dominate entertainment, but also our jobs. People are already losing jobs to tech. Fact. And whilst it is true that when new tech comes, it creates new kinds of job opportunities, I just don't think there's many that a machine could one day not do. Robots could be comedians, actors, company CEOs, even jobs as complex as radiology, using medical images to diagnose patients. Something that takes humans 10 years of training eventually just boils down to spotting patterns, and that is something AI is inevitably going to be able to do at some point. I'm not saying that it's there yet, or that it'll be ready in 10 or 20 years, but I'm saying that it has the potential to get there. Even being an influencer, artificially intelligent influencers already exist. Social media personalities that you can follow right now with real people as fans. Lil Miquela is one example. She has 1.8 million Instagram followers, has perfectly planned and timed content. This girl has done brand collaborations with companies like Prada, but she doesn't actually exist. It's AI. And that leads me on to the next point. Humans could very well become a side piece to technology, unless we merge with it. And at this point, let me be clear. Human robot cyborgs, part man, part machine, like you see in the movies, are fake. But the core idea behind them is very real, and I would argue is already here. If you looked at some numbers, humanity is progressing with every metric. You could look at economic growth, human lifespans, you could look at the levels of disease around the planet. But really, for almost all of these, it's not humans themselves that are improving, it's the technology, and we're just tied to it. In my head, that is humans having already merged with tech, but if that wasn't enough to convince you, the link is about to become much more direct. You might have noticed a few tech trends in the last decade, and they ultimately boil down to this: seamlessness. A technology that makes our lives richer, whilst also being seamless, is a tech that catches on. That's why 3D TVs with those funny glasses never took off, or why virtual reality in its current state with these expensive headsets is such a niche tool, even though it's an incredible experience. All signs point towards us ditching cables and headsets and glasses over the coming years and going straight for a brain-machine interface, something that connects our brains to our machines. It is the destination in this pursuit of seamlessness. The concept is based on this. Our minds are racing. We can think incredibly quickly, but the bottlenecks come when we try to communicate those thoughts. Humans can only communicate at a fraction of the speed that we can think, and so the next logical step after things like voice commands for your phone is a direct brain link. In fact, Elon Musk, founder of Tesla, is convinced by the idea. His words were, even in a benign scenario, humans will be left behind. Meaning that even in a situation where AI doesn't decide it wants to kill us, at the very least, humans will just become a bit irrelevant, unless we start to upgrade not just all the things around us, but us too. And this thought process is what promoted him to found another company called Neuralink. They're going to offer the option to plant what are essentially thousands of electrodes into people's brains, using a device that pretty closely resembles a sewing machine. And on a bit of a side note, this in itself sort of demonstrates my point. This bot can accurately thread tiny electrodes with incredible precision in a way that even a fully trained brain surgeon just couldn't. And these electrodes have two purposes: to both send and receive data from your brain to your smart devices. It sounds terrifying, but it's not even a hugely invasive procedure. Compared to brain surgery, where your head would literally be cut open, this would leave no scars as the insertions are less than 1 centimeter each. There'd be no need to shave your hair off, and the whole thing should take 45 minutes. So right now, there are literally rats they've tested this on with USB-C ports sticking out of their heads. Neuralink can plug a cable in and download the activity of their brains the same way you would transfer a movie or download a bunch of photos. And where this tech is going is even more fascinating. In the short term, the goal of this is just to help people with brain diseases. So for example, enabling paralyzed humans to communicate once again through their brain signals. But Neuralink have also quite clearly stated that this will be joined by the goal of human enhancement. And here's the kicker. Humans will no longer just use artificial intelligence. Humans will become artificially intelligent. We're talking crazy stuff. Because your brain can communicate with the cloud after getting these implants, you could gain unlimited memory storage to be able to retain more information. Your AI could measure brain activity and diagnose potential diseases, literally years before you start seeing other external symptoms. And taking your phone out of your pocket and dialing a number to call someone will seem like a relic of the past. If you wanted to talk to someone, you could just think of talking to them and you'd be doing it. Language barriers will break down because your own AI can auto-translate whatever it hears, and if you wanted to learn something, granted it's far faster now than it's ever been, but instead of sitting there poring over websites and YouTube tutorials, you could just download the knowledge. Now, applying a brain-machine interface to the masses is still some way off. Our understanding of the brain needs to grow, and it's going to take time for the general public to accept the idea of it. But I can see how it would happen. Early adopters would be people with serious brain conditions who would give anything a go just because conventional solutions haven't worked. These people would give companies like Neuralink a chance to iron out early issues, and over a few more generations, the wider public will start to accept the idea because they've seen loads of people with brain implants, and all this time, the benefits of having them are just going to keep growing. And this leads us on to the next chapter. We've already talked about how artificial intelligence will skyrocket and humans will become more entwined with it. I don't think either of those things are up for debate, but the big remaining question is, will AI bring unlimited joy to people, or will it lead them to their grisly end? And my personal take is that whilst this isn't a doomsday scenario, we have to be really careful. Let me explain. Some people say that a machine can never be more capable than the person that invented it, and you can see where they're coming from. You've got others who say that, sure, one day machines will completely outpower humans, but no matter how many times more powerful a machine gets, it'll always only be able to do what it was programmed to do. So we have nothing to worry about. Again, fair point, but I've got a serious problem with both of these two things. For starters, no one person invented the computer. The computer is a culmination of the efforts of humanity. Every invention, from the discovery of fire to the making of the light bulb, has contributed to the computer. It is the combined work of the brightest minds of every generation that has come before us. And so even if it was true that AI is limited by the intelligence of its creator, which I don't think is true by the way, we would still have an incredibly powerful AI on our hands, and something we should be cautious about. Secondly, I do agree that if humans continued to make self-contained computer boxes, like the ones that sit on your desk, making them increasingly more powerful each year, that would not be an issue. But that is not what we're doing. Right now, as I'm speaking, companies are out there competing to see who can build the AI that can think fastest, learn quickest, and grow on its own accord. And there are three ways that I think this could come back to get us. Let's call them scenario A, B, and C. I watched a video not too long ago that really demonstrates scenario A. It was a computer simulation of a few little AI-powered robots. You got red robots that were given the simple objective of catching the blue robots, and the blue robots that were just told to hide. And what happened in this experiment, as the simulation ran again and again and the AI started to learn from each attempt, was both fascinating and terrifying. To start with, as you'd expect, the red agents moved around randomly, just hoping to bump into the blue ones. They soon started to understand, though, that they could do better by going straight towards the blue robots, but then the blues countered this by moving the boxes to block the exits. Cooperation. The bots on each side were now working together. After many more tries, the reds realized they could grab a slope and use that to climb over the barrier the blues had created. And this whole thing continued. As the environments got more complex, so did the strategies, and eventually it looked like the blues had won. The second the timer started, they would lock the red's slope, preventing the reds from moving it, and grab two big blocks and create an impenetrable triangle around themselves. When this simulation was being created, this was theorized to be the final strategy. At this point, there should be no way that the reds can win. So game over, right? Well, no. It turns out, the Reds managed to do something that, when they were first programmed, was not even anticipated as a possibility. They realized that even though their ramps had been locked, they could still use them to jump on top of a box and then drag the box whilst being on top of it until they got to the shelter of the blues and won. Hopefully you're starting to see what I'm getting at with scenario A. AI has been given the ability to learn, and that is far more powerful than any kind of programming, because as soon as you teach something to learn for itself, it can start to behave in ways that you didn't initially anticipate. Humans have thought of a myriad of defense mechanisms against any potential future robot takeover. We've even actually come up with the laws of robotics that should be assigned to machines to make sure they don't cause problems. Things like programming a robot to not injure a human being. However, the very nature of this AI that can learn and grow on its own accord means that we can't actually predict the ways in which it will cause problems, and so we can't pre-program it to not do those things. Just like that example video I showed you, we didn't want the red robots to effectively surf on top of boxes like that, but we didn't realize they could, and so never programmed them not to. AI is not human. It doesn't think like a human, it doesn't solve problems like a human, and so this can be a really good thing, but it can also be a really bad thing as we become more and more entwined with it. Let's take this humanoid robot, which was told to make it from A to B as fast as possible. It's easy to forget that the AI doesn't know it needs to run facing forward, or that it should stay on two legs. It just ends up somersaulting continuously to get to B as fast as possible. Whilst on one hand, incredibly clever, AI is just blind to some things that are completely obvious to us humans. And so, as was put very well by a TED Talk all about this,
and it's really easy to accidentally give AI the wrong problem to solve. And often we don't realize that until something has actually gone wrong.
In other words, imagine a super intelligent AI that is present in every corner of the planet. Because remember, people in the future are fused with this artificial intelligence. Let's say it was programmed with the simple and frankly innocent task of making sure the Earth lasted as long as possible. If it then just so happened that the AI started to see humans as detrimental to this objective, it would find a way to get rid of us, maybe a loophole in the rule of not causing harm to humans, and it would do this without thinking twice about it. Again, not a human way of thinking. The AI doesn't have emotion. Intelligence is what has elevated humans above every other species on the planet, and look how it's worked out for them. As the apex creature, humans have pretty much done what we wanted with every other organism on the planet. And some people worry that the same could happen to us if we build an even higher being. Sure, AI won't intrinsically have a desire to rule or kill people or any of the stuff you see in movies, but the worry is that because all these AIs are being developed behind closed doors in secret and companies are competing with each other, that they could build something accidentally that could make humans some sort of obstacle when it comes to achieving their purpose. And plus, in terms of reproduction, it takes humans almost a year to have a baby, and then 20 or so more years just to raise it. Machines could replicate overnight, with their entire collective intelligence being shared with each other. The second thing we need to be really careful about, scenario B, is that it's not just what the AI could do, it's what people could do with the AI. If humans become artificially intelligent beings, this extra intelligence could just as well be used for harm as well as good, and each person will have more power than ever to cause damage. Giving people super intelligence is the mental equivalent of giving everyone a weapon, and there are a lot of people who are opposed to that concept for sure. And then, scenario C, the third spin-off of this potential AI future, is that whilst it's very possible that by then humans will be less susceptible to traditional human viruses, this integration with technology could mean we could contract a new kind of virus, a computer virus. Who knows, maybe the AI of an entire population could be hacked and people could be held for ransom. It's tough to talk about this right now, we don't really know, but safe to say that with a new technological era, you're going to have new potential threats that we didn't see coming. And this leads me onto the final chapter. We've looked at how technology is evolving, and humans are not. Humans will merge with that technology to keep up, but that's kind of risky. So that leaves us with the final question. Why? If this technological crisis is so potentially dangerous, why on earth would we be walking straight into it? The answer is that we're just being human. Humans and our intelligent minds are never satisfied. We've always had the need to push forward, and this has cost us many times in the past. Our rush towards industry caused massive damage to the planet and our climate. The rush to use nuclear technology has led to threats of nuclear war that could wipe out entire countries in one go. And this AI revolution, to me at least, seems like another one of these cases, but if not done correctly, with even worse consequences. You could think of Earth as having gone through different technological phases. The first time we started using tools to hunt, the first time we developed currency to trade, the dawn of electricity, and so on. Well, with the next phase, because it's being driven by competition between companies and countries, we are less focused on trying to get to the best, safest future for humanity and more focused on trying to get there quickly. It's become a race, and there's a serious concern that something is going to be overlooked in that process. In order to make sure we stay safe, AI essentially needs to be regulated. Simple as that. Google CEO Sundar Pichai recently came out and said something that sums this up quite nicely. Companies such as ours cannot just build promising new technology and then let market forces decide how it will be used. And on a final note, I just want to add that predicting the future is hard and nobody really knows what's going to happen. I've heard people who think AI will literally stay where it is for the next 200 years, assisting us. I've heard people who think we'll all be wiped off the planet in 200 years, but my take is somewhere between the two. We'll still be alive and breathing in this time, but just maybe not in the way we expect it to be. If you've watched this far, thank you so much for watching, and let me know if you enjoyed this video. It's been a long time in the works, and it's something different. If you enjoy it, I enjoy it too, and maybe I'll make more stuff like this. With that being said, my name is Aaron, this is Mr. Who's the Boss, and I'll catch you in the next one.